Hello, I'm Yeehaw, and welcome to episode 0 of Exotic Breakdown. In this series, I broadly aim to discuss the various underwhelming exotics of Destiny 2, how they work, and how I would change them. My specific goals for each video will be to go over the following: the history of the exotic in various terms, including, but not limited to, if the exotic showed up in Destiny 1 and how it worked there, when the exotic was released in Destiny 2, and what balance history the exotic has had in Destiny 2. I will also show gameplay and describe the exotic's loop with regards to how it currently works, before I make suggestions about how I think the exotic could be improved. Buffs could include, but are not limited to, basic numerical buffs. For example, increasing the amount of grenade energy a perk grants by 50%. This is something Bungie does often, and is a realistic expectation. Additional functionality. For example, adding new effects and lines of text to an exotic that synergize with its existing function. Also something that Bungie does with some frequency, but requires more work. Partial reworks. For example, changing the existing functionality of existing text on the exotic, such as removing subclass or super restrictions. Something Bungie does occasionally, but that requires nearly as much work as developing a new exotic. Total rework. Completely rework an exotic from the ground up, something Bungie has done a limited number of times, rolling 2 exotics into one and reworking one of them entirely, but it requires as much work as developing a new exotic entirely. Not something I would expect to see done with any regularity. The focus of the series will be to largely talk about exotics as they apply in PvE activities such as strikes, legendary lost sectors, etc. I'm starting with Warlock exotic armor, as Warlocks have the most underwhelming set of exotic options in my opinion, and many of them are mostly, if not entirely, focused on PvE functionality. The exotics I discuss in this series won't follow any particular order, but I will be using an internal tier list to determine which exotics I am discussing. Exotics that I consider to be S, A, and B tier will be excluded from discussion, at least with regards to improvement. When collecting gameplay for these exotics, I will build around their strengths to the best of my ability and use them in both lower and higher level content to evaluate their overall effectiveness. Some exotics are great in high level content while being less useful in lower level content, and vice versa. When it comes to how I will rank exotics on my internal tier list, here is how I would describe them with the following tiers. C tier, middling. This is the tier of exotics where I expect to see most disagreement about their inclusion. It will include exotics some people may enjoy using, but that I consider barely not good enough to pass muster. D tier, suboptimal. These exotics are not very good and can't compete in high-level content, but have some functionality that gives them appeal in very specific situations. E tier, underpowered. These exotics have very little benefit regardless of the activity, but still have just enough usefulness to escape the bottom tier. F tier, garbage. These exotics are so bad that attempting to use them as they are intended will worsen your gameplay and make completing content more difficult. Avoid at all costs. My primary goal for this series is not to denigrate or insult Bungie's developers or their design decisions, but rather to discuss and inform about the many exotics in Destiny's large library that have fallen by the wayside for one reason or another. The series is also an outlet for me to put out some ideas I've had with regards to fixing some of these exotics, as well as inform newer or lapsed players about the state of exotic build crafting in Destiny 2. And I have lots of ideas to share. When I release this video, I should also be shortly releasing a video on my first exotic, so please tune in. I'm excited to share this journey with anyone who may be watching, and there are lots of exotics to discuss.